Well, House lawmakers passed a package of 58 bills in recent weeks, all bent on addressing America's opioid crisis. But some worry these measures are just tinkering around the edge. RFD-TV's Sarah Muck highlights the communities impacted in today's Rural Money segment.
Congress has a message for communities struggling with the opioid crisis. Help is on the way.
It will advance treatment and recovery. It will improve prevention, it will give resources to communities, and it will fight deadly drugs like fentanyl.
The Support for Patients and Communities Act passed the House on a bipartisan vote of 396 to 14 and included a number of critical provisions to help both urban and rural areas, from programs to study the effectiveness of treatments to incentives for medical professionals to prescribe non-opioid alternatives.
This will help people suffering from opioid use disorder to get access to the critical treatment they need on the day the legislation is signed into law.
Though the bill is popular on both sides of the aisle, Democrats worry these efforts may simply not be enough, especially given other recent actions in Washington.
Republicans directly threatened the health care of people with opioid use disorder when the Trump administration asked a federal court to strike down key patient protections in the Affordable Care Act. If successful, the Trump administration's action would eliminate protections that ensure more than 130 million Americans with pre-existing conditions cannot be denied coverage. And guess who is considered a pre-existing condition? Opioid use disorders.
The White House says their focus is on expanding access to evidence-based treatment and recovery services, and that they've helped secure $6 billion in additional funding for these programs over the next 2 years. Lawmakers continue to say eliminating the stigma around this issue is vital.
For too long, embarrassment and stigma surrounded the disease of addiction. It's time for that to change. If you're struggling with addiction, if you're fighting that invisible battle, please know that it's okay to seek help.
With around 3/4 of all farmers in rural America having been affected by the opioid crisis, some lawmakers say even this bill doesn't address the magnitude of the crisis. Lawmakers in both the House and the Senate have proposed new legislation calling for significantly more funding to give communities more resources to cope. For RFD-TV, I'm Sarah Muck in Washington.
Well, a recent Senate appropriations bill also allocated $1.5 billion in additional funds for combating opioid addiction and increased funding for rural telehealth programs. However, the Support Patients and Communities Act has not yet been taken up by the full Senate. Well, meteorologists